Look, I knew Mikel Arteta was crafty, but he keeps coming up with performances designed to get him that striker signing. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot, the Black Man on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, I mean, you've got to be crafty if you're going to be a Premier League manager. You can't just think 1D chess or 2D chess. It's got to be 3 and 4D chess. And the 4D chess here, clearly by Mikel Arteta, is sending his team out and saying, let's create loads of chances. Let's not finish any of them, because that could prevent me from being able to make the case for needing a striker signing. So the team and the manager and the club have obliged. Now all we need is that signing, which I'm sure is going to be here any moment, which leads me to tell you, hello, we love you. And tomorrow is scouting video day, our first scouting video of the January transfer window. And if you're saying, who are we going to scout? This is a special one. We've never done this before. We are going to scout the video where David Ornstein says Arsenal are unlikely to be active in the market this window. We're gonna parse every word. We're gonna look at his facial expression. No, I'm kidding. We're gonna scout some players. Maybe Brian Mbeumo. There's some PSG players to look at. Maybe just for shits we could do Isak or Osimhen. I will tell you though, we did Isak. You can go look at that. We've done Vlahovic. We've done Nico Williams. I mean, a lot of the players we're linked with, we've scouted. Now, granted, that was a little while back, but I think there's some interesting stuff there. In fact, you want to have a really interesting scouting video. We did Isak and Xerxes in the same video. And let me tell you, the reaction was as you'd expect looking at those two players, but that's before they made their move. So these are always fun to go back to. We do have an entire playlist of scouting videos. If you want to spend $2.50 and watch every scouting video we've ever done, they're right there. You can use code AVP. First month is half off. And we want to do that because, look, I get it. If you've never done one of those Patreon things, like before I signed up for Arsblogs, I was like, am I really going to sign up for one of these? But, I love Andrew. I loved Arsblog. I was like, I got to do this. And I love it. But until you do one, I can understand where you're like skeptical about it. You can always sign up, by the way, and subscribe on Apple if that's easier for you. But with Patreon, we have that half off the first month thing. So it becomes $2.50 to give it a try. You're going to get somewhere between 5 and 6 things to listen to or watch every week. And sometimes more. If we play 5 or 6 times a week, you're just going to get 5 or 6 instant reactions. You'll always get that. We live stream those too. So there's lots of good stuff there. Look, I get that right now there's a lot of people that saying, you're trying to tell me to go watch more Arsenal stuff. I'd really like to see less Arsenal stuff at this moment. And I can connect to that as well. We're just happy to have you here. We got a lot of fun stuff going on. One last thing I will tell you, I promise, is it, because this time of year it's important. If you are over there or you think about going over there, we have a Discord. And you might say, well, I don't even want to do that. But there's one thing in the Discord I cannot recommend highly enough. And it's like almost a secret thing, but we've got a user in there called Cornballer. And he aggregates all the Arsenal news and then all the Arsenal transfer news into 2 channels, Arsenal News and Arsenal Dubious Transfer Rumors. And everything's in there. Links, social media posts, info. So if you don't want to go on social media or you just want to have like a quick scroll in the morning and know everything that was going on, it's all right in there. It is a really cool way to just get up to date with what's going on. So that's my preamble. 3 minutes, a little longer than usual. Here now is Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Good to see you. So Clive and Paul were on the instant reaction, neither available today. So I apologize for that. Clive and I will do the scouting video tomorrow. And then, of course, Clive will be on a main pod probably on Monday, I would guess, to cover the 10-0 over United in the FA Cup. It's Arsenal heritage after all. Here's the good news, right? We play these terrible teams, United and Spurs. It just so happens that they both got results over Liverpool recently. So our luck, what do they say? If no luck at all, if my luck were anywhere, said I have no luck at all or something like that. That's kind of how it feels at the moment. Tim, I want to start from this League Cup standpoint, more with like a State of the Union kind of thing, how people are taking this. And I think this is a bit of a Rorschach test, this game, because the people that still want to feel encouraged about who we are and what we've been in this run where we were unbeaten would say, we had the chances to win this game, and it was just not our day. They had 2 direct pieces of play. They were clinical. We had a number of chances to, if not have it be 2-2, have it be 3-2 or 4-2 or whatever it is. We didn't. Then there are people who are going to look at this and say, I don't care what the XG or the chances were. We didn't play well. And the fact that we didn't finish our chances is emblematic of what we're missing at the moment. So I think that there's a bit of an ability to hold up a mirror to this game and see what you want to see in it. And I'm curious, A, what you see in it, which one of those is more convincing to you, and B, how you kind of feel about where we are right now. Because I think it is probably the most uneasy the emotions around Arsenal have been, I think, since we started to go on this exciting run maybe two plus seasons ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like the biggest test, doesn't it? I look back very often at the interview that Arteta gave when he was unveiled, and he used that. What phrase did he use? The tree's going to shake, basically, didn't he?
Yeah.
So when the tree shakes, you need, your core principles and all of that, and it feels like the tree is shaking, effectively, and I think you're right in terms of, and I think that often happens in defeats. Like, you'll kind of see what you want to see. I have to be honest, my base level emotional reaction, and like, obviously the XG really show, and I think you could see with your eyes. Like, again, I look back at my most recent social media post after the final whistle, which was, we didn't deserve to lose 2-0, but Gordon and Isak would be starters in our team even if everyone was fit, basically.
By the way,
Like,
just quickly, Tim, for anyone who doesn't follow this stuff that closely, the XG was 3.09 for Arsenal to 1.22 for Newcastle. I'm not sure there's ever been a case of 3.09 XG and having no goals, let alone not having 2 or 3. It is up there for one of our biggest XG performances this season. So again, I'm not opining on what that means for the performance. I'll have my say, but I just want to put that out there for people who aren't aware.
yeah, definitely. And so you could see with your eyes that Arsenal were, well, actually, I don't know whether you'd use the word unfortunate. Arsenal had chances. You saw that with your eyes, and that Arsenal should have got at a minimum something from this game. But again, it always depends, like, the luggage you go into the game with. I really like, we're talking about the XG here, but I really like, Scott does a deserve to win ometer, which is universally loved.
That is a divisive visualization he has created, for sure. Yeah,
But it's great, and he does it for every game. And I always look at the comments as well, and people are like, "Oh, you're only doing it for this game because of this." It's like, no, I do it for every game. It's just when you get angry about it, that sort of varies. But so I think he had Arsenal 49% and Newcastle, I think 35 or 36, and he was saying afterwards, actually, that's the strength of a model like this, because it doesn't just look at XG.
Right.
For example, and it will look at game state and things like that. And actually, this model is more generous to Newcastle than the XG, because obviously it takes into account stuff like they were 2-0 up for nearly 40 minutes. So of course their XG after that was pretty low, and things like that. I have to be honest, my base level when I came out was, I wasn't coming out thinking, well, at least we created a load of chances. I wasn't thinking that. In fact, that possibly made me feel worse, which probably irrational. But I wasn't coming out thinking, I guess I didn't have that unlucky feeling, is what I'd say. I didn't have that was misfortune, and that might just be the baggage I came into the game with. To me, it just felt a little bit more symptomatic of issues we all know that we have. And I know this conversation we'll probably have in this podcast, but when we talk about potentially augmenting the squad and the attack, which we needed to do regardless of the Saka injury, my worry at the moment is we're actually not that short on numbers in attack. Like,
it's a pretty strong lineup.
5 of our 6, what you'd call senior front 3, are available. The problem is none of them's the star boy. And and look, this happened to Liverpool last year when Salah came back from AFCON and he wasn't right. Nunez, Diaz, Gakpo, those guys didn't carry a title challenge. They just didn't. And so I think my worry is that we don't have that sprinkle of star quality, and I don't think we can get it until Saka is back, essentially. But I have to say as well, I don't know whether I'd call it mitigation. I know there's been a lot of depressing, clickbaiting rubbish in the media about this, but the thing about the ball being a bit more flighty, I think that does explain some of the misses, actually. And if you've ever played football, and you can tell when you head a ball, how it bounces off your head will really, really tell you what kind of ball you're playing with. And when I look back on some of those chances, less so the Havertz one, but the one from Timber and stuff like that, when you get one of those plastic balls for like £1 from a corner shop or something.
Yeah, like in the grocery store, we have baskets of them. Yeah.
yeah. And like it touches your head and it just goes flying off, kind of thing. So I guess I was a little bit, I don't want to say convinced or persuaded, but I think there is partial. I think that's a partial explanation maybe for some of the misses we saw.
The only thing I would say, right, and it's a fair rebuttal, is It didn't impact Isak, right? Didn't
No,
impact
true.
Gordon. Like, so, I mean, and granted, those weren't headers, but, and just to defend Mikel for a second, he was not putting that forward as an excuse. This is what I hate about the current social media environment. Like, he was asked about the ball. And so he answered a question about the ball earnestly. I guess to protect himself, he could have said, I'm not going to answer a dumb question like that. But he was polite and he answered it. And then he got lambasted for it. I think, first of all, to the lineup point, this is the issue. It was a pretty strong lineup, absent Saka. The players were there that you might consider the ones we have to rely on. But this is what happens when you leave yourself short in attacking areas of the pitch. You wind up playing guys who have not been training and not been fit because you don't have an alternative. No one can possibly think Martin Odegaard is okay right now. You know, and his form ebbs and flows, but not like this. And he's just not okay. And Kai Havertz, I think, is probably not okay. These are guys who did not train, who were ill. And if you've been ill and laid up, you know how hard it is to get your energy levels back. And like Martin Odegaard, for example, I think we think of him as a guy with elite technique and skill. But I actually think one of Martin Odegaard's biggest qualities is his engine. You know, and he's our pressing trigger and all those things. And like, if you don't have that, you don't have much. If you can't arrive on the ball in time in the right spaces, you don't have much. I just think in general, you know, Leo Trossard is over 30 now. He's playing a lot of football. Were there other options and options we really like? You could make some different choices or you could make some changes from the bench. And the bench will definitely be a talking point down the line. I have to confess, and you know me, I am a data guy. I think it is very fair to say we had the chances to win this game and still believe we did not play well in this game.
Yep.
I don't think those are incompatible opinions. Now, just so we're clear, I don't think Newcastle played great. What really made the difference in this game was efficiency in both boxes. But that is why you buy elite attacking talent. Elite attacking talent is how you gain efficiency in the box. And it is an extremely telling quote from Mikel. And I don't think he's trying to knock Kai Havertz or his own players, but he said on Isak, he was involved in both goals. Unfortunately, the two times that he had the ball in the box, and that's what you have when you have the real quality up front. They can make the difference. They're very clinical. He went on to say, if you look at what both teams produced, it's not a result that reflects the story of the game. The reality is that they were super efficient with the chances they had. But in general, efficiency with the chances you get is a product of quality. And this is where you have to be a little careful about jumping to conclusions. For the past 2 seasons, no one has overperformed XG like Arsenal. We have been incredibly efficient. So I cannot sit here and pretend we don't have good players or good attacking players. But I think we are a little bit running them into the ground. I think we are short the star player who makes everything easier for the other players around him. That is certainly a part of it. And then you can say, yeah, it was a bit of an off day in front of goal. This actually reminded me a bit of the Brentford game. And you can say, how is that? We won the Brentford game 3-1. If you look at the goals in the Brentford game, we got 3 goals. What they all come from? Loose balls in the box that we were first to. And this was a game where we didn't create a whole lot through brilliant play, but we had loose balls in the box. Like the Kai Havertz clear chances from a deflected cross from a poor period of play, but he should score it, right? The Timber header is from a corner. The Saliba header is from a corner. The Gabriel shot from point blank is a loose ball in the box. I can't remember if that's off a free kick or a corner, but so the chances were there, but they were there, you know, through scrappy play. And this thing I want to talk about a little bit, Tim, is just the passing. As I watched us in this game, we had one passage of play where Partey finds Leo really nicely. Leo makes a run across the midfield. Partey finds him between the lines with a crisp pass on time, right to his foot where he can release it first time to Martinelli, making an excellent run. And Martinelli strides onto it, controls it beautifully. I think he does pretty well. I mean, like the way he controls that at full speed, the run he's making, there's a lot of positives there. I think he strikes it pretty well. He can't quite wrap his foot around it enough to get it past the keeper. Should he score? He probably should score. I think we had bigger chances, frankly, but that's a chance we created from a crisp passing move. And what I would say in general, as I watched this game, the weight of our passes, the tempo of our passes, the execution of our passes, very, very poor. We saw things in this game like Odegaard picking up the ball between the lines and standing on it and losing the opportunity. We saw Odegaard play a ball between Rice and Martinelli when both could have been played in. We saw a lot of passes just rolling to a stop at feet, couple extra touches to control. And I'm wondering what you think of that in general, just the tempo, the way to pass, the crispness of passing and movement, because for me, just our overall buildup is looking ponderous and sloppy. And I think that that's hard to explain. These players aren't bad players. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, I think probably a mixture of confidence and fatigue. I think Clive used the phrase on the instant reaction. He can see the belief draining out of the group. I think we can kind of all see that as well. So I think emotionally, as a fan base, we're all pretty much on the same page. It's just our response to those emotions are different, where you lay mitigation, if any, what you want done about it, who you want punished and punched in the face and beaten up for it and whatnot. But we're all kind of on the same page, and that's because we can see even stuff that's barely perceptible, like confidence and kind of vim and vigor, and we don't have it at the moment. And that's why that Martinelli chance sticks out, because that passage of play sticks out. I'd also say that probably one of the few times that Newcastle really commit numbers forward as well. So it's probably one of the only times we have a real opportunity to do that as well. But these things are, it's a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? Is do you cut teams open with that incisive play, or do you get to do that incisive play because teams are open? Like, it's a little bit of both, really. So it's definitely laboured. It's definitely looking laboured. You can see and that's one of the reasons we're all so worried as well, because we're coming into like January is the most congested month of the season. Like, I remember just before the World Cup in 2022, we had 9 games in October, and I remember thinking, wow, that is unprecedented. And that was because we were squeezing a World Cup in. We've got 9 games in January just because that's normal now. Just because that's like,
and because we
the new
qualified
normal
for the League Cup semifinal, which is 2 legs for very, very good reasons. Very good reasons.
Yeah, well, but the second leg's in February, so it only added 1 game in January. So like this expansion and extension of the Champions League.
Good point.
And I guess when I think about some of Arteta's, like, shall we say, managing upwards comments that I think he's been making in the last few weeks about having the thinnest squad in the league and all of that, like, and we talked about it in the summer, the impact of those 2 extra Champions League games is significant. It really is, particularly because of when they come. So, like, even if we hadn't qualified for this, it's a 7-game month, an 8-game month. That is a lot. It's a lot of football to play, and particularly compared to last season when we had 3 games. So, but we're at the beginning of that. And so it's not getting any easier. Like, we are going to have to flog this group a bit. And before the game on Tuesday, when talking to my friends in the pub before the game, we were kind of talking about maybe let's go a bit weaker on Sunday against United. Maybe that's when like Kivior comes in, for example, or someone like that, not that we had that much room to rotate, but I don't think we can now, because I kind of feel like we can't afford to lose that game just for the mood as much as anything, but also because I saw someone post, might have been Ollie Price Bates or someone posted, this is what I think the lineup should be on Sunday. And I think it was largely the same, except like Marino and Calafiori coming in, but he kind of said, we have to get partnerships going. Like so we're in a situation where, I mean, how many different right wingers have we tried now? And Sterling's still there. So like Havertz has played there, Trossard's played there, Jesus has played there, Martinelli's played there, Nwaneri's played there, and we know, partially due to Nwaneri's injury as well, like we're no closer to a solution. And Sterling, the guy we actually loaned to back up Saka, is yet to have a run there. So like, we're already on like 5-6 different guys who've played on the right wing, which shows you we don't have a clear idea of of what we're doing with that position. So we've got to get there quite quickly, and so we can't burn Sunday's game, not least because this semi-final, it's not totally beyond us, but it's very unlikely now. So like we've kind of achieved the worst of both worlds, because when you, with the League Cup, either go out in the 3rd round or win it. Basically, no, not win it. I do think the early rounds have some, like, Preston, that had some use, right? Nwaneri got a great goal. Kivior had a good get. Like, probably up to the quarterfinal, actually, you're all right because you can use it as an opportunity to rotate. But once you get in the semi-final's the bit that messes your fixture list up. So once you're in it, win it.
Yeah, this is the worst case scenario, right? In a way,
Yeah.
which is making it to the semifinal, losing badly at home, and having a second leg you have to fight for, but probably don't have a chance to turn it around. And so, like, you're going to go strong in that game. You're probably still not going to get through. I mean, we could, of course, we could. You know, anything can happen in a game of football. But yeah, it's a bit of a worst case scenario. And I think your point about partnerships is important. If you think about last season, from January to May when we were in rip-roaring form. I mean, think about the right-hand side. White, Saka, Odegaard, Kai, all combining in that area of the pitch. You can close your eyes and I could tell you where everybody's standing, you know, where those patterns are. All the patterns are broken. And to your point, sometimes Odegaard's passing into Nwaneri, sometimes he's passing to Martinelli, sometimes he's passing to Leo, sometimes he's passing to Jesus, sometimes he's passing to Kai, sometimes he's passing to Timber, sometimes he's passing to Partey. Literally every single player who plays with a right side bias, other than Odegaard, since Odegaard has been back, has changed. And in fact, Odegaard missed games with illness, right? And so then it was Rice who was over there. And on the left side, it's been Rice, it's been Marino, it's been Kai. You know, I don't know. I think there are so many reasons why things don't look the way they should. Losing your best attacking player and best player full stop never helps. Players that are really, I mean, they just look totally shattered to me. Doesn't help. Some of that is definitely squad building, and we'll come on to that in a moment. But I do think that there's also a psychological component here. As a fan of Arsenal, I know for me, and I can only speak for me, if Manchester City was running away with the league on a 100-point pace and Liverpool were 7th, I'd probably be sitting here going, this just isn't our season. Bad referee decision, the penalty against Brighton, the red cards. I mean, we have seen at least 3, maybe 4 decisions against us this season that you won't see again. And all you have to do is look at the Liverpool United game to see a ball kicked away, restart, right, no yellow by the same guy that sent off Trossard. It's hard to take. And there are injuries. You lose Martin Odegaard, your player of the season from last season, for 2.5 months, and you lose Bukayo Saka maybe for 4 months, your player of the world. And yeah, I think I'd be able to just say, this is just not our season. Just didn't happen for us. You know, this is one of those right, what do they call it? Left tail outcomes, right? If you simulated this season 1,000 times, this would be in your bottom 5 outcomes. The problem is it's not City running away with the league. It's Liverpool. And it's Liverpool with a new manager, even though it's all the same players. And because it's Liverpool, there is a feeling like it was our season. It was there for us. City finally fell away. And this is the season where we stink. And we don't stink, but you know what I mean. So I understand, because I connect to that frustration too. The feeling like, well, why is it this season we're falling away? Why, you know what? Why did it happen this season? I think there's every chance, if we go on to finish second, if we have a decent run in the Champions League, if we get past United in the FA Cup, that come July, we'll all be sitting here and going, you know what? Boy, that was an unlucky season, but I think we could just go do it again this season and be really good if we just don't have those kind of injuries. But right now, no one's feeling that way, Tim. And I do understand the impatience. And I think ultimately, everybody looks at this team, and the thing that is making people frustrated is the ways in which we're falling short are the ways you would have thought we'd fall short based on the business we did last summer. That's what's really, you know, if Saliba and Gabriel had been the injuries, and the reason we were falling short is our defense was just dreadful, I do think that there'd be a bit of forgiveness for that. If we had bought a bunch of fun attackers and we were scoring goals for fun, but we were conceding, you'd say never would have seen that happening. But because the struggles seem to be in the attacking areas of the pitch where we didn't reinforce in a way people felt we needed to, it all feels very much a problem of our own making. Even if the injuries would have derailed us anyway, you don't get to say the injuries would have derailed us anyway when you didn't do the things that people felt you needed to do. And so I really do get that. So as we look in January, I mean, I think people have this attitude like not buying in January is totally unacceptable. And that feeling is a feeling built on what we didn't do in the summer, but not doing it in the summer doesn't mean it's suddenly possible in January. How are you feeling now in the wake of Ornstein saying we might not do business? Do you feel like, hey, I get it, there may not be that player there? Or is it just a case of the job is to find the player, get it done? Because I've said this multiple times and I will say it again. It is the floor we need to protect to some extent. I know people don't like hearing that, but if we can't go in the league and we can't go in the Champions League because of injuries and form and a little bad luck, fine. Don't let the season unravel. Protect that. And I think we need a player to do that, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And this is where you'll tap your mugs. I've written about this today. So because I addressed this in a lot of detail in my column this week. Yeah, just talking about like there are competing things going on. Like we have to bring in an attacker, but that's going to be really hard to do. And we have to acknowledge all of the risks that, a probable gamble might have. Okay, so, Liverpool gambled on Darwin Núñez. It's not really worked, has it? But
No.
but when you've got Salah, it kind of matters less. But we've seen firsthand very recently, like, Pepe, Aubameyang, Lacazette, every single one of them left for free. And in fact, one of them we paid to leave. Two of them we paid to leave. That is the consequence of getting those gambles wrong.
I would say with Aubameyang, though, the gamble we got wrong was the second contract, not the buying. The buying worked out the way you would have hoped.
Yeah. And I don't want to say, therefore, we should do nothing. Like the conclusion of my column was we have to try to do something. Because what we know for sure is this isn't enough. We know that. That is evident. So we have to try to do something.
But you referenced Liverpool gambling on Darwin Núñez, and Darwin Núñez would be a great example of a big gamble they took at a big price that probably hasn't paid off the way they wanted to. But there are other things they did, for example, Diogo Jota. And Jota has worked out, and that was a Premier League buy at a reasonable price from a guy who had decent underlyings and was a bit of a market opportunity, and it worked out, I think,
it's a
really
bit
well.
Trossard, isn't it?
Well, that's what I was going to say. So, like, what about? I know everybody's excited. Get Isak for 180 million, and do it in January. Like things that just aren't going to happen. But what about like a Brian Mbeumo? What about someone who the team's not going down, the club's not going down, but the club's not coming up. Their season is going to be okay regardless. He's probably going to leave on a free if they don't find a deal soon. Maybe you overpay a few minutes. Like, what about getting that one extra player that just takes the load off the group and can be your next Leo, as Leo is now over 30, and everybody knows once you're over 30, you're basically dead.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think we need one of that type of player, and then I do think we probably need like a Declan Rice style. Like the way I'd look at it is like a good wide player like an Mbeumo or something like that, and then like the centre forward needs to be like, and I'm more relaxed about that happening just because I don't think it can happen in January basically at all. I'd be really disappointed if we didn't make a go at someone like Mbeumo, for example, if we weren't knocking on the door and, lodging bids and things like that, maybe even trying to unsettle the guy a little bit, maybe. I'd be really disappointed if we weren't doing that, because that's, to your point, that's a floor protector, not a ceiling raiser, but like, we need that player. We need that player regardless, right? So,
especially because Leo's probably going to go relatively soon anyway.
Jesus,
that's a player you
Sterling.
need. Yes, yeah.
Sterling's going. Jesus, I'm sure we'll listen to any offer we can get. Trossard, probably. If not, there's talk that maybe he's been offered like 1 year or something like that. Like it's time. Do you know what I mean? It's time to really do that attack. And Trossard and Sterling, in and of themselves, were tied over options, because Mikel Arteta knows this idea that Arteta hasn't been willing to or wanted to spend in attack is frankly bollocks, and like none of the evidence supports it. Like Vlahovic, Mudryk, stuff like that, and like, because the other thing as well is with attackers, like the price is so much bigger. Like if Ben White, Urian Timber, Gabriel, Calafiori, even Marino, if they were forwards, they would not have cost the money they cost Arsenal. They'd be double the price. Like Urian Timber, the right winger, not the right back, is 80-90 million pounds. And he'll have 4 or 5 other clubs after him. The market's just easier and cheaper for midfielders and defenders. That's all it is. It's not about, I don't think, it is not about what the manager prizes most. It is about what is the easiest to do, like what's easier to get done. Because generally, when Arsenal want a defender or a midfielder, they've tended to get them. And I think that's why. It's because they're cheaper and fewer clubs are in for them. The quote-unquote failures or near misses in the market are all attackers. They're all attackers. And that tells you that Arteta has wanted those players, but for whatever reason, we've struggled to land them. But Like they have to go and at least try to do something, at least try. And I think a lot of Arteta's comments are very pointed in that respect. And I think in Edu, he has potentially lost a confidant. Perhaps we're not considering the fact that Vinay went in the summer. Like things look very different in the kind of back room. On potentially the upside, like I said, we need an attacker anyway, so I don't think this is a reactive short term thing. Like this let's say it's in Buemo. Like when Saka returns, he will be fine. He will get minutes. Like he will be a feature in the squad. But I guess on the upside, from the executive angle, there's potentially there's a guy in Edu's old position who's auditioning for it, and like if Arsenal land that attacker, that'd be a very nice audition for him. But because I think the thing that gives me pause as well, Elliot, as I listened earlier this week to an Athletic podcast that was about Liverpool. It was about Trent, and it was basically saying, how did Liverpool get to this situation with Trent? And this, by the way, is a reminder. With Liverpool, they've had a season in 5th, 2 in 3rd in the time that they've competed for the league with City. So they have off seasons with injuries and with getting shit wrong in the market. Yeah. They had a situation where their entire midfield aged at the same time, and they suddenly had to go and buy 3 midfielders at the same time. And now they're in a situation where their 3 best players are all out of contract at the same time. And they asked the guy who covers Liverpool for The Athletic, like, how did this happen? And what he was talking about, and this is what worries me a bit, he was saying, like, 2 years ago, Liverpool had a big reshuffle in the kind of executive layer at the club, the recruitment layer of the club. So at the point where they really should have been pinning these guys down, maybe less so Salah and Van Dijk because of their ages, but definitely Trent, they were kind of busy moving pieces upstairs and maybe took their eye off it a bit. And that bit worries me as well, not least because we're probably at a similar stage with a lot of contracts, and that's another factor of this. Surely we are going back to the table with guys like Saliba, Saka, etc. soon. And, if we don't do anything or don't try to do something, there's a potential knock on there. So like it's a big moment, and I don't think, because there's the competing thing about the market being a bit crap and everything will be overpriced, like I think it'd be unfair to say like they must pull the absolute blue sky option out, but they have to try and do something.
Yeah, I think this is really important, Tim. This is the hard thing. Okay, I want to be clear. Just because something's hard doesn't mean you get to opt out of doing it. You still have to do it. If you look around, though, why are City struggling? They're struggling because defensively they're weak, but also none of their attacking buys of recent times have worked. Doku? Not really. Savinho? No. And Grealish was 100 million. That feels like a lifetime ago. He's gone. He's worthless. Chelsea? Well, Mykhailo Mudryk was nearly our mistake, but he was their mistake. Christopher Nkunku, they're looking to move him on. Is Jadon Sancho a good buy? Pedro Neto has, 1 goal? Okay, let's look at Liverpool. Who'd they buy in attack in the last couple of seasons? Chiesa. Like, that's basically it. And the guy hasn't played. United, Højlund and Xerxes, and they don't want either of them. And Antony, if you go back further. I mean, it is really interesting as you start to look at these teams. Spurs bought Solanke, and I've got to be honest, of all the buys I've listed, he's probably the best one.
Yeah.
But, it just underscores none of the big Premier League clubs have seemed to be able to, with any consistency, buy attacking talent that has worked out for them in the last 2 or 3 summers. We bought Leo in January, and we bought Kai Havertz in the summer. And honestly, of all the names I just listed, those are probably 2 of the better outcomes. Now, I acknowledge Kai Havertz was not bought to be a striker, and Leo was the fallback from nearly making the Mudryk mistake ourselves. But it's worked. I think it just underscores how hard it is. But just because it's hard, again, I want to be clear, doesn't mean you don't get to not do it. So I sort of admire the club in some respect for not going out and making the big Mudryk mistake. We nearly did. Or getting the guy, going out and buying Xerxes, there, but for the grace of God go I. They had their Lacazette Aubameyang summers, Højlund and Xerxes, except neither one is as good as Lacazette or Aubameyang. So I accept that it's hard, but at some point, if you really want to be a Champions League and Premier League winner, you don't get to say, well, the striker and the winger are hard, so we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You have to do that. And by the way, the reason so few teams win the Champions League and the Premier League is because of that. That
Mhm.
piece is really hard.
Yeah.
Finding Robin van Persie is hard. United bought him from Arsenal and won a title. Finding Thierry Henry is hard. We found him and we went invincible. Right? Like these are the margins. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you look, I'm really fond of doing this, of looking back through history at other times when Arsenal have been in title races, how I felt, how things transpired, and stuff like that. So, 2002-3, Arsenal don't win the league. They go to Bolton, they get 4 players injured in the same game. Sol Campbell gets a really ridiculous red card against Man United. He's already been sent off once. He gets a 4-match ban. Vieira injures his knee in the same game. Like, that feeling I had during the spring of 2003 was just, this isn't what happens to teams that win the league. Like,
Yeah.
they don't get this, and you feel the momentum and stuff like that. And on the other side, when Arsenal won it in 97-98, Roy Keane did his ACL in September 97. Cantona retired summer of 97 suddenly. And we played United. People might remember this game, March 1998. We go to Old Trafford. We win 1-0 with an Overmars goal. They're so injury depleted, United. They played John Curtis at right back, who's 18. They have to take him off at half time because Mark Overmars rips him a new one. Peter Schmeichel goes up for a corner in the last minute and pulls his hamstring. And you look at that. We'll look at it from the Arsenal side, but you look at that from the United side and you just go, that just doesn't happen. Like, when you don't win the league when that stuff happens to you, right? And that's kind of, and it was the same for Liverpool last year. You know, they have AFCON and they have like several players going away to that and all of that, and you go, it just doesn't happen for you. But another pertinent example I'll give you is 98-99. Arsenal lose the league by 1 point. That summer, they wanted to sign Patrick Kluivert, but they balked at his wage demands and didn't do it. That season, Arsenal scored 21 fewer goals than Manchester United and lost the league by a point. It's one of the most straightforward. If they'd paid Patrick Kluivert that money, they would have won the league. It's one of the most absolutely clear-cut, straightforward examples of that ever. And don't get me wrong, I don't know that, Patrick Kluivert is there in January 2025, but there is a cost to not doing it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just no question. And in Tottenham would be fair to say we're having an injury crisis right now. They are. They've had a defensive injury crisis. And look where they are. They're 12th. We're second. So I feel as much as things have gone against us, there might be a world in July where we're sitting here going, I can't believe how well we did in spite of everything that went against us this season. But certainly right now, it doesn't feel that way. And there's such incongruous feelings. And look, I think the other reason the frustration is so big is coming out of last summer, we were on a very high and a very low, right? We were like, we're right there. We're ready to do it. But boy, we may have just missed our chance. It was that close. We felt we were going to go again. And it felt like a pivotal summer for us to go again. And there is a feeling like we very much got that summer wrong. And now here we are. Now, I think there is a very fair point that we could have gotten last summer perfectly right, whatever anybody thinks perfectly right would have meant. And a 2.5-month injury for Odegaard and a potentially 4-month injury for Saka would have meant that we don't achieve anything regardless of whether we got that summer more quote unquote right. But you have to put me in the camp of feeling there are some things from last summer that I don't totally understand. One of the things I want to ask you about this game, and we haven't really gotten to the game yet. We'll get into some of it, but I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. This is a game where we're 1-0 down and then 2-0 down. All 3 summer signings are on the bench. Sterling, Calafiori, Marino. Now with Sterling, I accept. I have no idea if he was fit enough to play. Just putting him on the bench, maybe for optics to avoid putting another academy kid on the bench, basically. But
could have been a message as well.
Yeah. Message to the board. Sure. None of them come on though. And I think if you're in a situation where you're in a cup semifinal and you are down at home and your 3 summer signings who you bought, because these are the guys that are going to help our campaign be even better than the last one, are on the bench and none of them come on, it's not a ringing endorsement of those guys. And I'm wondering if you think that's overthinking it or that's fair. I mean, I don't know that, Calafiori is a very attacking oriented fullback. Marino is meant to be our attacking addition in midfield, even if I sort of scoff at it a bit. And Sterling was our forward addition. And I accept he may not have been fit. Do you have the same reaction I do, though, that like it's not great, at least from an optics standpoint, that when you're trailing 1-0 and then 2-0 at home in a cup semifinal, that none of your summer signings in a key summer find their way onto the pitch?
Yeah, I mean, it depends which way you take that, or because like we brought a left back on. We've got quite a few of those. Like we swapped the left back out. We didn't put the new signing on, which I think is a little bit about managing his fitness, which I think there's reason to do. It's more the case, I think, that the summer signings, like none of them are attackers. That's more the discussion point, because would Calafiori have turned this game around? Probably not. Sterling, A, fitness, B, I think we already know what Arteta thinks of him, quite frankly. The more surprising one is Marino. I must say I was expecting him to come on. I saw opposite where I sit, I can sometimes see, who's going to come off, because I can see the fourth official sorting out the electrical board, and I could see the number 5. So I knew Partey was coming off. And I didn't really look Jorginho up and down, and I was just like, they flashed number 5. There's a relatively tall guy there with dark hair. That's got to be Marino. But when it was Jorginho, I was like, oh, okay. I was really expecting like Marino on, Rice going back to the 6, and then, maybe after that, like going with a Havertz, Marino, like I was expecting it to be a little bit more cavalier, and I have to say I don't really know why that didn't happen, particularly because we were putting a lot of crosses into the box, which Newcastle were kind of daring us to do, and they had 2 utterly enormous centre-halves like Dan Burn, like, one of the tallest men in England, I think, and Sven Botman. And so, like, on one hand, we kind of finished the game with Havertz on the wing and no Marino and putting crosses in, which I found kind of weird. At the same time, like, maybe Arteta's thinking was, well, I don't want to put crosses in precisely because they've got those centre-backs. I'd rather be, I'm not putting Havertz on the wing because I think he's going to whip in a great cross. I'm putting him there because, maybe he can pick a lock or play a 1-2 or something. And because that's something we're not seeing as well at the moment, right? To your point about partnerships and, like we're not seeing combinations and 1-2. It just feels like quite laboured passing, passing at a distance. We're not getting into those triangles and things like that. And maybe it was a sop to force that, but I was surprised to not see Marino come on. The other 2, I'll be honest, I didn't really think about.
Well, and the Marino thing especially seemed weird to me because we're spamming crosses, we're spamming corners. I mean, spamming is such a negative way to put it, but like we did wind up falling back on corners and crosses a lot. I do think, as frustrating as this game was, the thing about Newcastle, especially if they have the lead, that's a team that's comfortable being forget 2 banks of 4. At one point, they were in 2 banks of 5. And like they really were comfortable saying, "Go ahead, see what you think you can get out of this." And we still got the chances. I mean, the really disappointing thing is, here's the problem. When you're not playing well, when you're short your best attacking player, you've got to manufacture other ways. And we did in this game. We did manufacture them, not maybe through the scintillating play we want to see, but the Timber chance from a corner, the Saliba chance, the Kai Havertz chance, the Gabriel chance, certainly the Martinelli chance is from great play. One time when Newcastle were a little bit out of their shape. And to get no goals from that is just bad. It's really, really bad. Efficiency in the box is not just luck, it is skill. And I think there's another point there, and this is something we have to acknowledge. If you want to look at the XG, fine, but acknowledge this for a minute. This is the byproduct of how we are creating chances right now. The chances didn't fall to Odegaard and Martinelli and Leo consistently. The biggest chances of the game, right, it falls to Timber, I think. He's a fullback. Another big chance falls to Saliba. He's a center back. Another big chance falls to Gabriel. He's a center back. Now, to be fair, our center forward had the best chance of the game probably and completely shanks it. So, there goes my theory. But I think, when you are creating chances through corners and set pieces and they're falling to guys like Gabriel and Saliba, you are asking defenders to be your goal scoring heroes. I want to cover the big moments of their goals too, because there are some defensive questions to ask. I want to look ahead to the United FA Cup. There's still a lot to do, but let me, at least I always say we care about you, and I have yet to provide you with the brands you need to to be supported in your life and your projects. So I need to do that. Let's put it this way. If I care about you, I need to do that. And in order to do that, well, one of the first things I can do is tell you about Manscaped. So I use Manscaped products just about every day. I love them. I think they are wonderful. And, as much as we joke around about the shaving the privates thing, which I think, you need to do it. Well, you don't need to do it, but if you are doing it, you need a good tool for it. You want to put your time into working with and shopping from companies that make quality products. And the one thing I will say, if you have any questions about Manscaped, every product of theirs I've used is high quality. Okay. So you can go buy other stuff. You can go do other stuff. But if you're thinking about Manscaped, the one thing I will say is the products are high quality. That has been my experience. They now have the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Cuts through the New Year's forest with ease. Their line, not mine. Just saying, that's their line. It's got 2 skin-safe blade heads for a fresh start. That is brand new. You have the LED lights. You can see what you're doing. Waterproof. I think shaving that area of your body in the shower, best way to do it. Easiest cleanup, safest. It's got a travel lock, long battery life. The beard hedger, if you do maintain a beard, I am unable to, but the beard hedger is a titanium-coated T-blade that lets you maintain your beard at the level you want. There is a built-in zoom wheel that has 20 lengths of beard trimming, 60 minutes of runtime. So, I think you have great products for trimming the hair on your body that you need to trim. And if you're going to do that to your body, you don't want nicks, you don't want cuts, you don't want scratches, you don't want to have to clean up hair everywhere. These are the products to go get. Use Manscaped. You can get 20% off free shipping with promo code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Go to manscaped.com, use promo code ArsenalVision, get 20% off for free shipping. I gave them a bit more time than they are probably contractually eligible for, but you know what? I do like their products. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp isn't online therapy. It's therapy that just happens to be online. It's really this simple. If you need therapy, this is an on-ramp. This is an on-ramp to doing therapy. Maybe you start here and then you decide you want to go into an office and work with a therapist. But getting in a car, driving to a therapist, driving back from the therapist, that's not something everyone can do. Maybe the cost is going to be prohibitive. Maybe the time is prohibitive. Maybe access to therapy is prohibitive. The moral of the story is you want to be doing therapy because it makes you a healthier, happier person. That's really what it is. Makes you a more productive person. I have been in therapy. I absolutely advocate for doing it as part of your life. My mom is a great example, did therapy her whole life. Now she can't drive. She's at an age where she can't drive. Does that mean she shouldn't be able to do therapy anymore? BetterHelp gives her access. It's an on-ramp to doing something that makes a difference in your life. With over 5,000 therapists in the UK already, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide range of expertise in mental health. Write your story with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month with BetterHelp.com/vision today. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. Do it now. And finally, they're back. This podcast is sponsored by Indeed. Indeed is a hiring partner that helps you find good candidates fast. When it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. It's the matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you get quality candidates fast. Okay? Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use, the better it gets. And listeners to this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Just go to Indeed.com/ArsenalVision right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire, you need to tip. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Okay. That was fun. Excessive, but fun. Tim, a couple of big moments. Let's just cover them one by one. Timber's chance. Do you have it as a huge chance? I do. I mean, I think it's really this simple from that position. You have to do better. Headers are hard. They're not that hard.
Yeah, usually I'm a big apologist for players missing chances because I always think there's a reason. And yeah, I think when you played the game a bit, you can kind of spot some of those reasons. But he should have scored this. Yeah.
Yep.
I think this is where maybe the football that's actually a balloon thing might come in because I can't.
He doesn't get over it though. Like I get that, but he doesn't get over it. He mistimes the jump.
I think it just bounces off his head basically.
Yeah.
But should have scored.
Okay, so we're in agreement there. Can I just say for a second, like I thought this was a good Rice game. I don't know if you have it as a good Rice game. I thought he was the one player that drove us forward, tried to impact the game, to speed it up, to get past the block. but I also think his corner deliveries are excellent. And I think we've just totally overlooked this. Guys like Kevin De Bruyne and stuff come in for huge praise for their dead ball delivery. He had the low free kick the other day in the Brighton game that Marino could have tucked away. He had great corners here that could have been goals. Quick word for Rice and just being, I think, generally excellent, and his set piece delivery being a real threat for us right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think Clive said in the instant reaction, it was like a bit of a captain's performance. And sometimes you really look for this, like when the chips are down, who are the guys who run harder and go faster and fight harder for that ball? And I think we can see Declan Rice is absolutely one of those players. And I guess sometimes as well, there's probably, if you wanted to weight that a little bit, when you're not playing well, the guy that runs and runs very hard and all of like shows up even more. So it could just be that this was a normal Declan Rice performance, which is still completely laudable because there's a lot of guys there not doing like their normal performances, and this used to happen with Freddie Ljungberg. Actually, I remember in the dim and distant past, Arsenal finished second 3 times in a row. In the late 90s and early 2000s. And fortunately, they panicked, sacked the manager, sold all of the players. No, they didn't. They kept them together and won the league a couple of times. But
oh, yeah, that's right.
But there was a point where Arsenal were at a slightly difficult juncture, and Freddie Ljungberg used to have this. Everyone used to be like, why does Freddie Ljungberg always play well when we play badly? And I always came to the conclusion, well, actually, he's just doing normal Freddie Ljungberg stuff. And that's very eye-catching and all of that, and it's just against the background of a lack of inspiration and creativity that probably shows up a bit more. But yeah, I thought he was excellent, and I think you could see he was in a very I'm not standing for this type thing, which we should acknowledge even when we do lose 2-0 and it doesn't work.
If you want to have any cause for optimism, I think one of the things you could say is eventually these players will start to come back into form or maybe look rested and healthy. And I don't think we've had a fit Rice all season. And this was another game where I think he's starting to look more like Declan Rice. That's going to be big for us. I mean, he was immense for us last season. I think he's come back from the Euros and struggled this season. Maybe now we're going to get to the better Declan Rice. The best move of the game, I've touched on it already, but party to Leo first time pass. I mean, say what you want about Leo, who I think has not had a great season, but someone's got to pass it first time. Can you pass it first time? Could we do that? Well, Martinelli makes a great run. It invites the pass. The pass is on time. I think Martinelli does really well to take that under control on the sprint, to be fair. I don't know. The finish isn't good enough because it's not in the back of the net, but I think he does about as well as I ask a player to do in that situation, and maybe just needs to wrap his foot around it like 1 more millimeter and he's got to go. What do you think?
Just unlucky, essentially. I get, people who again, there's this camera angle from behind the other goal that's like at 45 degrees and up in the air, and people say, why didn't he go across the goalkeeper? But I think you have to really break your stride to do that, and I think he realised that he didn't want to break his stride. He was in a good stride. He had a good kind of 30-40 yard run at it, and it is just easier to kind of curve your body around it. But I also think he was probably trying to trick the goalkeeper a bit. And look, honestly, this is just one of those I do put down to quite a bit of bad luck, because there's another timeline where that clips the inside of the post and goes in, and we say, what a wonderful finish. I have absolutely no gripes with that finish at all. In fact, I'd say I think it was a good idea, beautifully shaped, just didn't quite come off. And sometimes when you're a bit down on your luck, luck is not the only reason we're having problems in front of goal, but that one I do kind of just put down to a bit of bad luck. Look at Isak's finish again, and because he's in, and I'm not doing the guy down, obviously, because he's in form, and it's like seven games in a row. I think he gets more on that than he means to, and I think he's that close to properly ballooning it, actually. Mm-hmm. But as it turns out, probably because it's on his swinger. No, hang on. Is he left-footed or right-footed?
He's right-footed, sure.
He's right-footed, yeah. I was going to say. Yeah, so it's on the swinger.
Check that.
If he'd done that on his right foot, I bet he'd have ballooned that over. But the form he's in at the moment, it goes in off the underside of the bar. I don't think he was aiming for the underside of the bar. I think he gets too much on it. But he's close range. Everything's going for him at the moment, so it goes in. So, it's not an attractive explanation, but sometimes that just happens.
I also think the reaction to the Martinelli chance is simply this. If that's Bukayo Saka who misses that, people would say, great run, great
Yeah.
take, unlucky. It's Martinelli, and this is totally fair. Martinelli not having the season anybody wants and has been under the microscope a bit, including by us. And so there's going to be a more negative reaction to it. Overall, like I look at that more as just, that's a shame. Some days you score,
Yep.
some days you don't. Then it does lead um, to the Isak goal, I think is shortly after that. Let's look. It's 8 minutes later, something like that. And this
This is
is it.
bad
Like,
defending.
this is just bad. Yeah, I was just gonna say, and this is a hard thing. When players who are good do things they don't usually do, sometimes you just got to throw your hands up. You know, I'm not. What can I say? Saliba and Gabriel are as good a center back partnership as you can possibly ask for. I think Saliba has one weakness in his game, and I think long straight balls on his head
Mhm.
are still not his strongest suit, which is why I think Gabriel is a very good partner for him. I'm not going to blame either of them. I think they're also a little unlucky with the ball just falling where it falls. I have a bit of an issue with Odegaard, and I want to tell you this. There are videos going around on social media where it's been sped up to make it look like he's pushed. He's not pushed. He's not strong enough. And
Lent on.
yeah, and by the way, should it be him there? Should he be the one in that position? Is he unlucky? The way the ball just falls to Isak is bad luck in addition to bad defending. But I am reluctant to kill Saliba or Gabriel,
Mhm.
even though I acknowledge that the Saliba does not handle the ball well, the long ball well. I think Odegaard needs to be stronger, and then from there, it is an easy finish that Isak, I think to your point, gets just about right. You evaluate that similar to me?
Yeah, I think Odegaard's the guilty one there. As centre backs, you're going to go up for so many headers and all of that in a game, and you're not going to win all of them. Quite frankly, it's like kind of getting to the knockdowns is the, and to your point about when players don't do things they don't usually do, like it looks laboured and frankly a bit lazy from Odegaard. I know he's not that player. I know we all know he is not that player, and he's good off the ball in terms of his pressing and things like that. Obviously, this is different. Defending your own box is very, very different. It's about awareness of what's around you and who's running in after you. And I think he probably just doesn't really see Isak because he's not really switched on because he's not actually a defender. There's a difference between being a good off the ball player when the other team's defenders have the ball and tracking runners and all of that. But it looks very sloppy. So yeah, you could call them like half errors from the centre halves, but really Odegaard's the guilty one there. And I do kind of support that thesis of why is it him there? Why is it not Partey or Rice? I don't know.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of bad head scratching stuff in there and also a little bit of bad luck. And that's kind of how football works. It's usually a combination of those two things. Um, as we move through the game, I think there's a Gabriel volley point blank, off an Odegaard cross that doesn't come off. Then Odegaard gets it between the lines, steps on the ball, loses it 1 minute later. Isak, quick fire shot, and Gordon rebound, quick to the back post. I think this is Isak's goal more than it is. I think Gordon
Mhm.
gambles and gets lucky. I think Raya does really well with the save.
Mhm.
Timbers come in for some criticism for being late, and he's a second late. I think there's a bit of luck, right? It happens to go right where Gordon gambles. Gordon was excellent in this game. He does what you'd want your forward to do. He gambles. His gamble comes off. The ball goes right to where he is, and it's a goal. But Isak getting that shot off so quickly from that position, not needing, I'm thinking about a Kai Havertz in that situation, not to kill Kai, but like he'd still be cutting that back onto another foot, trying to find an opening or trying to find a player. Isak in the box gets the ball, takes a shot,
Yep.
and he's rewarded for it. And so, I mean, I have that as more about Isak than about Gordon. Only in the and again, I'm not uh, disregarding Gordon's excellent uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Anticipation and reaction. But I do think that Isak getting that shot off quickly and being so decisive in his action is what leads to that goal. You?
Yeah, definitely. And look, Gordon plays with Isak every week. He probably knows to anticipate the snapshot. And there are probably a very select few strikers who would have done that in the Premier League. You can probably count them on one hand. So, yeah, I mean, Timber shouldn't get caught like that. But Gordon sees that all the time. He's probably it's not even a thought. It's just he's going to shoot. He's going to shoot. Go and follow it in. And Timber probably against most other teams that probably happens all the time, and we don't even notice it because we're not playing against Isak and Gordon. So not great on Timber's part, but again, I struggle to get angry at anyone really about that goal.
The last really big chance in this game is Kai's. It's at 59 minutes, and I think getting it to 2-1 in that moment could have been huge for us. And here's the interesting thing. This is why I think you can look at the XG and still not think we played great. This is a great example. This goal comes from, in my mind, a passage of play that's a little bit frustrating, where the passing isn't super crisp. It goes around the horseshoe. It's not particularly decisive. We wind up getting a hopeful swatted cross under pressure out of that move, but that cross gets deflected. And the deflection goes, you talk about luck. Sometimes you need luck in football. The cross goes right to Kai, point blank, with the goal gaping. And he misses his header, goes off his shoulder. And this is a player that's done wonders for us. And I think we are too quick to kill players about one single moment. But this game feels very much like drawing 8 bold lines underneath what we are missing right now, which is what Isak provided, real decisiveness and efficiency in the box versus what Kai provided in that moment. And so I feel for him because I think Mikel's comments almost make it look pointed at Kai, which I don't think is what he meant, but that's a bad miss. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, it is. But this is one, and you're right. Like at that point of the game, 59 minutes, like because it's a 2-legged tie, we don't have to go chasing too much after that. I don't think. I think you can go, let's be measured, let's still attack and all of that, but we don't have to throw everyone up there because even if we lose this 2-1, like that's salvageable. I think the mitigation here is that the cross deflects, basically, and therefore it's not a natural trajectory. You're watching it come out of the air a lot more because there's a lot more loop on it. It's not whipped. It's not just stick your head on it, and you can get that lost in the floodlights as well. And I don't know whether that's what happened, but I mean the crucial detail is it comes off his shoulder, right? He doesn't head it wide. It comes off his shoulder and bounces wide, and it comes off his shoulder because the trajectory, I always struggle with that word. Trajectory of the ball is weird, and that's why it comes to him in the first place. I think if Trossard just gets that cross, like we had loads of crosses in this game that just drifted over to the back post and didn't go anywhere. It's probably what's happening with this cross. It's the deflection both takes it to Havertz, and it clearly unseats the Newcastle defenders because they're nowhere near it. So it tricks them. It tricks them into like a positional error. And it's the only time of the night they're not clearing across. But the deflection giveth and taketh away. And I think it makes it a slightly more difficult chance. That's overstating it. But yeah, the fact it comes off his shoulder, his timing's not there. Again, don't know how much he's trained over the last week and a bit. He was out for 2 games with illness, like been out for a good week or so, probably hasn't trained in that time, timing a bit of an issue. Yeah, I feel like there are caveats, if not excuses, for that one.
Yeah, I was very frustrated by it. I mean, I think if you want to go back to the data, 70% possession, 3.22 expected goals to 1.22 expected goals, 23 shots, 3 shots on target. So if you want to look at the data another way, their XG on target was 2.40, right? So they took the chances they had and turned them into better XG than what those chances were through their efficiency. Our XG on target, 0.55. So we took 3.22 expected goals of chances, 23 shots, and turned it into 0.55 XG. I really think you can look at this game and absolutely, I think it is intellectually consistent to say we should have gotten something from this game with the chances we created, and also say we did not play well. I think it is very intellectually consistent because I think the quality of the way we played, apart from the Martinelli chance, was not good enough. And yet, we produced enough to get a result that we didn't execute. And that's efficiency in the box. And that is the hardest part of the game. The reason you buy attackers, and the reason buying attackers can determine your future is because great attackers make great teams. You very, very rarely see a great team without a great attacker. I think Liverpool is a good team, a very good team, but they have the best attacking player in the league and maybe in the world, and so they're a great team.
Did you
I
see?
think.
I was going to say, did you see Andrew's blog this morning on Arse blog? He was talking about how like Salah scored 38% of Liverpool's goals this season. So he's like, you take that player out of the team and see what happens.
Well, and the funny thing is, like, you don't just take him out because someone else would play, right? But even if you take him out and replace him with a fine player, a decent player, a okay player,
probably.
You're that all of a sudden Arsenal may still be second to Liverpool, but by 1 point, or it might be level, or they might be behind us. I don't know. And I'm going to say this, Tim, and this may be harsh, but I think this is where I'm at. If you're going to lose your best attacking player and probably your best player, full stop, for maybe the rest of the season, but certainly for many months, the only world where you survive that is someone steps up, first of all, but also your one other great final third player goes supernova in his absence. We needed Odegaard now to play, not just like Odegaard last season, but maybe even a slight improvement on Odegaard last season. And we are getting very much the opposite. Now, to be clear, he had a baby. He's been ill. He had a very bad ankle injury. And I just want to emphasize, you come back from that ankle injury doesn't mean you're fit. You might be playing through discomfort. I realize this can sound like excuses, but I don't think Odegaard is the player we're seeing right now. But the fact is, if I'm being honest, we're not seeing the Odegaard we need. And so it's not just that we've lost Saka, it's that the guy who could be at a level to help us ride that out a bit is very much not even at his own good level. He's far below that. And I wonder, is that sort of the trick here? Is it somehow, some way, we have got to get Martin Odegaard to be the Odegaard, if not only of last season, but maybe a step up from that, because that is a way we could potentially start to, I think, overcome, to the extent that it's possible, the Saka absence.
Yeah, definitely. It's why I'm quite attracted to what Clive said in recent podcasts about almost turning this into a 4-4-2 and having like Odegaard and Havertz next to each other, ergo having Odegaard a bit more central, because basically the whole right side's broken down, right? None of like White and Saka are not there. So like that triangle is kind of broken. So there is probably a good argument for having Odegaard a bit more central, a bit more kind of shooting positions, maybe playing a bit closer to Havertz, and having an understanding between those two. Like I do quite like that idea. And I think Clive's other reasoning around it, which is kind of like Martinelli, Trossard, they're not Saka, they're not killers, but you probably get them running up and down in more of a 4-4-2 kind of shape. But again, if we're going to stick with the theme of comparing past league winning seasons, to your point, 2001-2, Pires gets an ACL. Now he gets it in mid-March, so we get most of the season from him. But what carried us over the line? Freddie Ljungberg having an utterly unmatched, unrepeated purple patch, and not just in his hair, over that 2 months. Like, whether it was by luck or whether there was something about Pires not being in the team that increased his importance, like he never had 2 months like that at Arsenal again, before or after that. Basically, a lot of his legend at the club is built on that couple of months, and I guess that's what we're fishing here for. And even last season, when we look at how our attack was restructured in the second half of the season, we focus a lot on Havertz going up front, and obviously that had a big impact. But I think that had a good impact on Trossard as well, and Trossard hit a purple patch, and we're paying on the other side of that now, because Trossard has very steadily been a slightly above XG player his whole career. End of last season, he wrecked that and went significantly above, and now he's below. So, unfortunately, it's kind of evening out at the worst
possible time.
yeah. I guess that's the solution, isn't it? We need a Freddie Ljungberg circa spring 2002 to step up.
Yeah, someone has to raise their game. And I think there's another alternative here, though, Tim, and this is what does my head in. This is the one area where I have to admit I can't stop seeing football how I do, and people are going to wish Clive was on for this segment, but he's not here to talk back to me and correct me. So now I get to really derail the podcast completely. I understand the theory of the case for going and getting a Marino. I do. I understand wanting a box crashing, dual winning, physical player on that left-hand side, off the ball player. I do. I really do. I cannot fathom building a squad that has one real on the ball attacking midfielder in it. I can't. And I know, we let Vieira go, and people will roll their eyes out of their head and say, what would Vieira give you? Nothing. We let him go, though, on loan. Like, he could have at least been there to the extent that that's of any value. And we let Smith Rowe go, and I get this. I've been over this time and time again. But I think one of the ways you can ride out a Saka injury is you say, hey, we spent $110 million on Declan Rice. You know what he can do? Everything. He can cover all the ground. He can cover every inch of pitch. And we've got these tucked in fullbacks who close down the space. And we've got Saliba and Gabriel, two of the most talented center backs. So to recover what we've lost with Saka, we're going to put Rice at 6, tell him to cover every blade of grass, and we're going to have an extra attack-oriented, on-the-ball, creative player in the left 8 alongside Odegaard, so they can share the role, so that the left and right-hand side have ways that we can access central space. And by the way, Mikel knows more about football than I do. How he wants to play works. We've seen that. It took us to 28 wins last season. But when you lose one of these forwards, one of these critical forwards, and we're already short in that area, a way you can make up for it, Sterling can't replace Saka. Right? Even if he were fit. Leo, Martinelli, Jesus, Kai, Jesus, Leo, like none of that replaces Saka. So you put an extra player on in an area of the pitch where you can be a little bit more attacking on the ball. And that doesn't mean we can't occasionally use Marino at left 8 or Kai at left 8. I get that. But we don't have that player. And this is the thing that just I find really hard. I mean, you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see Nwaneri and Odegaard. Or put Miles Lewis-Skelly there and Odegaard, right? Put two on the ball 8s in front of Rice. Let him clean up all the space. Maybe you're just the slightest bit more open, but you get just that one more bit of technical quality in the final third to replace what you've lost in Saka. And it's not me repudiating or disagreeing with, dare I even try to do that, Mikel's philosophy about how he wants to play, but just a way to do it differently in the absence of key players. And we've left ourselves really no way to do that. So I don't know. Is this just me seeing football the way I want to see it and being unwilling to back off of that position?
No. Like as we did with Odegaard, we have to find a different way to do things because like, let alone we haven't got like the Saka replacement. Nobody's got that really. So and one of the things I think my eye was really drawn to in this game as well was how often there was just no one up front because Havertz is kind of, coming deep or going wide to connect and combine and all of that. And like when you haven't got Saka, we need that guy in the box. We need a guy in the box. And so having like, I guess it's a bit like having Firmino but without having Salah, like without Mane and Salah rather, like how effective would Firmino have been? And so we've got like our striker coming away from the box, drifting, and I don't think we can do that at the moment. I don't think we've got enough firepower. And so to your point, if we have kind of two creators in the number 8 positions, particularly against certain opposition, then maybe we can leave our centre forward up front a little bit and maybe he can make the kind of lateral movements we saw Isak making. I didn't see Isak in the centre circle. I didn't see him connecting play. I did, but I didn't see him going out to the right wing. I saw him running between centre backs. That's what I saw him doing. I saw him running channels. I didn't see him out by the touchline. I didn't see him in the centre circle. And so, I kind of think it's fine generally to have that kind of model, but not at the moment. We don't have enough firepower to have nobody in the penalty area. So I think we have to find a way, or if Havertz does come away, that someone goes in and fills the space and runs behind him, which we weren't doing, probably because that's not Declan Rice's natural game. It's not Odegaard's natural game either. We have to find a way to get more presence in the final third. And I'm with you. If that has to happen as another, more creative guy in midfield, I'm all for it because let's create a little bit more in open play and try and get people by volume. Like, because we saw that, and it was Southampton and Leicester, who are probably the two worst teams in the league. But without Ødegaard, we generated loads of XG against those guys. And it wasn't because we were great or we were incisive. We just overwhelmed them, basically. And I do think we're gonna have to try to do that.
And by the way, like, the theory of the case here is we want to press, we want to create turnovers, and those turnovers create chances. Well, guess what? Playing with Rice at 8, playing with Kai at 8, playing with Marino at 8. Here's an interesting stat. We create among the most high turnovers of any team in the Premier League. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? We're near the bottom of shots from high turnovers. Now, what does that mean to me? To me, it means we create the turnovers, but the ability to make the pass after that, or the ability to do the next action, is not as crisp. So if you win the ball high up the pitch, but you can't convert it in those high turnovers into shots, and I may be misdiagnosing that, I accept, but that to me seems like it undermines the whole point of creating the high turnovers. So it is an interesting one, and I find it frustrating. And like, yeah, if Ethan were fit, I'd play Ethan and Ødegaard, especially right now because Ødegaard looks so overburdened and just isn't at his crispest. And you know, does that make us a little more vulnerable? It might. But the whole point of having a Declan Rice is he does the work of two players. You know, when Conte was at his absolute peak, one of the things that made Conte so valuable is he could do the work of two players covering all of the pitch so that you could do all kinds of interesting things around him because of what he could do, you know? And I think Rice has that capability. Everybody wants him to be Rodri. I don't think he's Rodri, but I think he can do some things Rodri doesn't do with his athleticism and physicality. And by the way, he was great in this game, and he can carry, and he can shoot, and he can deliver from set pieces. Rice is giving us a lot of really interesting stuff. I just think we could use him as a way to squeeze in another player in that attacking area. And we'll have to see how we try to solve this, because without Saka, I said this before, and we haven't internalized it as a fan base in my mind yet, there are going to be days where we still win 5-1, 6-1, 4-0. We're still very, very, very good. There's just going to be too many nil days or 1 days, because when you take your best attacking player out of a team, the team is worse as an attacking force, no matter what you try to do. And some days those other complementary players, auxiliary players, are not going to have it. And the thing we know, Tim, and we've seen this, game state really matters for us. You know, we've only recovered from being behind once this season. It was the Brentford game. It's the only time we've done it. So, you know, we need those goals early. And a lot of times when it's 1-0, we make it 5-0 or 5-1. But when it's 0-1, we often don't come back from that because teams can then get more compact and we struggle to break them down. You want to hear an interesting thing, too, that speaks to, I think, fatigue a bit. If the table was based on halftime scores this season, guess who would be top of the table? We would. We would be top of the table, and you can say, war a trophy. Like, the reason I'm bringing that up is, why is that the case? I think because our somewhat small squad, with our injuries, with our red cards, with our fatigue, has faded in second halves. And I think we've seen that very clearly. So, you know, that speaks to an issue we're going to have if we don't strengthen, which is there's going to be more games where maybe we do get our nose in front and we can't finish because we don't have the numbers. So there's a lot to think about. And Tim, I think that the place to finish this pod, by the way, I know there's been some links between Rosicky and the director of football role, Jason Ato, also being rumored to be in the pole position. I think Andrew dropped a pod on the Rosicky links. Obviously, I love Thomas. Whether he'd be a good director of football, impossible for me to know. I think we know less today than we've ever known what a director of football does and what makes a good director of football, especially in an era where you don't uncover diamonds in the rough. That just doesn't exist anymore. So we'll probably talk about that more as links get stronger. And obviously, if we settle on a director of football or sporting director, which eventually we'll have to do, we will go into deep dive on it. Phil and I did a Patreon pod on our director of football candidates, though, and did a bit of a dive on those. So you can listen to that on the Patreon if you want. So, Tim, United at home, Spurs at home, Villa at home. Those are the next 3 games. Forget the Villa for a minute. Hated rival United in the Cup, Derby at home. If you told me when I was at the Emirates against Everton in May, seeing the mood, seeing where we were as a club, seeing the excitement, that come January, there'd be a half-empty Emirates with a funereal atmosphere with 10 minutes to go against Newcastle in the semifinal of the League Cup, I wouldn't have believed you. It certainly feels a million years ago that we were in with a shout to win it on the last day. Beating United in the Cup and beating Spurs at home will be as quick a whipsaw turnaround of mood as you could possibly see. Those are the kind of results that changes your entire perspective, lifts a whole club, reinvigorates a whole club. But given where we are in terms of availability, in terms of fatigue, in terms of form, and given what those two teams have just done in taking points off Liverpool and beating Liverpool respectively, it looks a bit harder than it might have looked on paper a couple of months ago. I see these as almost existential season-wise in terms of getting the results we need. So let's take these two games together, United and Spurs. They're massive. How do you look at this and how we approach it?
Yeah, they're scary, aren't they? But at the same time, as you say, they could lift everyone. They really could. I can still, personally, I can still compartmentalise Sunday a bit, because my view on the FA Cup is win it or go out in the third round, basically. And I don't know if we're powered up enough to win it, but we've probably lost our best route to a trophy. And actually, I'm thinking of this. I'm not thinking about the FA Cup fourth round. I'm thinking about the mood of the fan base, which has already been quite low. I said on the IR after Brighton, like that's kind of the most frustrated I've heard the away end since like before COVID. And I'm not. This game doesn't feel, like you said, it feels more existential than an FA Cup game to me. The game on Wednesday, I'd take a 5-0 on Sunday defeat if it meant winning on Wednesday. That to me feels far more existential.
Interesting. You would. So that can I stop you for a second? So look, the derby is a more hated rival and a bigger game in some ways. Yep. You could convince me that there's more for us in the FA Cup than the league at this point. So what's your calculus there?
It's a mixture of it being the derby and the fact, I do think when you look at Liverpool's recent form, it's too much to say cracks are showing, but they're slowing down. And the frustration for us is we haven't taken advantage. But the kind of 95-point pace they're on has, the brakes have been not slammed, but slowed on that a little bit recently, just a little bit. And so I think that I wouldn't entirely give up on it just yet, particularly if we can make up some ground quite quickly, and particularly with the fixtures that Liverpool themselves have, where they go to Nottingham Forest, and I think they've got to go to Brentford as well, not long after that. So, I feel like it's kind of now or never. I feel like in the next two games, we have to make up something on Liverpool, and it's Spurs as well. That game will always matter more than any others. I think the other thing about the United game on Sunday that makes me apprehensive is Ruben Amorim, I think, talked about that the Liverpool game was the first time he'd had more than 2 days to prepare for a game. And I think that's a really interesting kind of facet for managers this season, the fact that the fixture list has been overloaded a bit more with the expansion of all the European competitions. And he was talking about I've basically never had three sessions in a row. It's 2 sessions game, and one of those might be recovery. Liverpool United had a 5 or 6 day run up at it, and you saw how much better they looked. And they've got a bit of a run up at this one as well. Yep. And it's kind of similar for maybe similar for Spurs as well. They had that extra day to prepare for their Liverpool game last night in their semi-final, and they looked a bit better. But we're both going to be in the same boat for that. So I do suspect that United will look better just because they'll have had a bit more training, quite frankly. And actually, I think this game potentially suits them a bit more because they're a mid-table team. And one of their issues, they're a mid-table team that obviously shouldn't be a mid-table team, so they don't try to play like one. But in games like this, they will play like a mid-table team, and it'll actually suit them a little bit more. So I am apprehensive about this game. However, and I'm worried about what that will do to darken the mood further. But even given that, I'd throw it in. Don't get me wrong, we don't have to do this, right? So it's not an either or. We can and should win both of them and try our best to win both of them. But I'd throw Sunday in the bin for Wednesday, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a 3-game run and holy cow. I mean, United at the Emirates in the Cup, Spurs at the Emirates, Emery's Villa at the Emirates, and like it's such a sliding doors moment because you get 3 from 3 wins out of 3 there, and like we won't even care about the League Cup. We'll be so high at that moment. But you don't. Shudder to think. I mean, I will say this: it is a really weird run of 2 games because United can't score and Spurs can't defend. So I don't know which is a better matchup for us. With United, I think you really have to go for it and trust in your defense to hold up against a United team that has generally struggled to create good chances. Against Spurs, I think you might play basketball a little bit and just trust that your defenders can be just that much better than their defenders. But can we take advantage of their crap defense with an attack that hasn't fired? It's 2 big questions. And can you play the same lineup in these next 3 games? I think we got a little lucky that we're Tuesday, Sunday. We needed that as opposed to Wednesday, Sunday, or Wednesday, Saturday. Not that usually happens, but any extra day of rest at this point is needed. I mean, Tim, just a little bit in terms of the United game. I'd like to see Kai back up front, I think. I'd probably like to see Jesus off the right and Martinelli off the left, I think. Leo, the problem with Leo, right? I feel like we're getting less and less from him when he's not scoring, basically. And he's not scoring. Not that Martinelli's in flying form. If Sterling is fit and you wanted to go Jesus, Kai, and Sterling, like I'd probably take it. Will you get the tracking back from Sterling? As I said, maybe this is a game we don't worry about it as much because United have been a bit tame in attack. I would like to see probably Odegaard, Marino, and Rice. I think it's time for Rice to be the guy in the center of our midfield who anchors everything and cuts everything out and lets us go focus on attacking. Calafiori, Miles Lewis-Skelly, at this point, as weird as it sounds, doesn't make a difference to me. It's going to be Timber on the right again. Timber, again, another example of a guy we're playing into the ground, Saliba and Gabriel as well. We've just kind of glossed, we're so focused on losing Saka or having lost Odegaard, we've glossed over the fact that Ben White had knee surgery and we've been without him, and he's been one of our most important players the last couple seasons. There's enough there, though, to beat this United team at home in the Cup. And it is an opportunity. I see it, instead of seeing United Spursville as a scary thing, I see it as an opportunity. This Newcastle game was a low ebb, coming off the Brighton game where I think we're a bit unfortunate, but also not great. We have been handed an opportunity with a 3-game run to absolutely flip the script and change how everyone thinks about our season in a week. But it's going to be hard to do, but we can do it. So I see it as an opportunity. It's interesting that you would rather have the Spurs game than the United game. I think you don't have to choose. You can have both. What's your expectation that our new star attacker will start against United?
Well, he has to sign time of recording in the next 21 hours, basically. So, yeah, I think he'll start and score a hat-trick, obviously. I mean, United are going to come with their back 3, back 5, right? And usually Martinelli plays against those. So I'm kind of expecting that to happen. Yeah, I think, look, go for it and all of that. Because I guess what's kind of frustrating is I can relate to the sadness. I felt sad coming out of the ground on Tuesday night. And then I had like one little look at my mentions on Blue Sky and I was like, I need to tap out of this. Like,
there's a lot of anger.
There's a lot of anger, yeah. And I can't connect to that as much, I have to say, but because I think we're dealing with this a lot better than Liverpool when they have these kind of injuries. And, look at City at the moment. We're dealing with it better than them for the time being. So
Liverpool had 2 seasons with some significant injuries and finished 4th and 5th. Now we could finish 4th or 5th. I don't want to rule that out, but we're currently 2nd.
Yeah, exactly. So, like a great chart. Listen, I will take personally, I will take the best out of whatever happens on Sunday, which is basically, if we go out, which I don't want us to do, don't get me wrong, I'm not blasé about it, but like I'll think, well, okay, we've lost some FA Cup games, and I'll take the positives out of that. Whereas if we win it, it's another chance to win a trophy for a start, but. Obviously, like it could be a big booster, could be a big kind of. It's a bit like when you look at last season. I think that result at home to Liverpool at the beginning of February. I think that's the thing that changes everything because it's all on the line in that game. We were 5 points behind Liverpool going into that game, so if we'd lost, that'd have been that. but we won, and that completely changed the momentum. I think it completely changed,
Having just
augmented
been
the
knocked out of a
belief.
cup by them too,
Yeah.
if you want to look at symmetry in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it augmented the belief of the team, and teams need that. And I've seen it with injury hit Arsenal teams as well. 2005-06, we went down 7 left backs that season, and we were 8th in the league. And then we beat Real Madrid in the Champions League, and everything changed. Everything changed. Like, we didn't get a lot of players back, but the belief of the team changed. So those results can be, and usually are, really, really important, just to give you a foothold on what you're actually doing. And I think Clive's right when he talks about, like, the belief has drained out of the team, and we need to repair that. And we've got an opportunity to do it, because as much as, on one hand, I'd love to have Southampton at home and Leicester at home as the next two, we probably win those, but it probably doesn't transform the belief of the team, as it didn't in October when we beat those teams without Ødegaard. Like, it didn't really say anything about our long-term health. They weren't booster victories. They were just nice fixtures to have at a bad time. So, there's a chance of a booster here for sure.
I'll finish on this. This is my super quick question for you. Is there any world where this season could get to a point where you would start to connect to the anger towards, let's just say, towards Mikel that is out there?
I don't think so at this stage. No, unless we lose like every single game, something stupid like that. No, not yet.
Yeah, I have some frustration with our squad building. I'll confess. I don't know where to park that frustration, because it's so hard to know who made what decision. Like, maybe Edu isn't in the job anymore because frustration boiled over internally about how things were done. I mean, we will never know that for sure. I don't think there is, for me either, a world where I'm going to come out of this season connecting to some of the really significant anger and frustration towards Mikel, because I am going to look at this season, I think, when it's all said and done, if I had to have a prediction, as a disappointing season that I'm frustrated by, but where there's just too many things that went wrong for us for me to clearly point a finger of blame. I think losing Ødegaard, losing Saka, some of the decisions, losing Ben White, losing Waneri, losing Sterling, losing Marino when he just arrived. Who knows how different his season could have been if he could have integrated quickly. There's just too many things that I'm going to come away from this season where there's other mitigating factors for me to feel clearly sure of how to analyze it. That doesn't mean that I won't get there. I mean, there's still time. No, I don't think so. But here's the good news. We don't have to answer that, because we're going to go on to turn everything around and win the treble. So, that's good news. And I do think, by the way, that is one nice thing. Like, we're down at the moment. We could beat United the weekend and still be in the cup. We could beat Spurs and have the win in the derby. Pretty soon we're going to have a Champions League draw, to think about. And we're going to have that dream, even if it feels very far away right now, that dream is going to come back. So there's still moments in this season ahead that can be very fun. And I just wish we could go to Dubai for a bit. That's all. Players look like they could use it. So hopefully they're in their sunbeds right now. They're borrowing Ben White's sunbed right now, and they're going to come back looking great against United. We'll come back with an instant reaction after that. We'll have scouting video tomorrow with Clive, and I think Clive and I will touch on some of the hot topics at the start of that, so like a mini pod, and then the scouting video. We'd love to have you join us for that if you'd like to. Instant reaction on Sunday, main pod back on Monday. And a lot to do between now and the next few weeks, because we got big games ahead. Tim, I appreciate the long chat with you today.
My pleasure as always.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. My name is Elliot Smith, Blackman, Twitter, and Gunner. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. United 0.